to episode number 43 and the fifth installment of The Best of Our First Year. Today needs very little introduction. The content of the original podcast will always be relevant. The Motherless Daughters Ministry resources mentioned are all still available, along with many new offerings that can be found on our website at www.motherlessdaughtersministry.com. This is one of our first interviews and features the very up-close and personal story of one of our volunteers. Let's jump right in. If you lost your mother to death, or if your mother was emotionally absent or narcissistic, then you have missed the nurturing care of a mother. As we'll explore in this podcast, Nurturing Words, Voices of Experience, being a motherless daughter means being a part of a club that no one wants to be in. The good news is, while you are unique, you are not alone. What if we told you Motherless Daughters Ministry has 20 years worth of pearls of wisdom to help you on your mother loss journey? It's true. And we are sharing all of these pearls with you through this very podcast, Nurturing Words, Voices of Experience, sponsored lovingly by Motherless Daughters Ministry. Welcome to Nurturing Words, Voices of Experience. This is your host, Gladys Bell, and today we're so excited to introduce to you a special guest. Dottie Menkhaus is a contributing author to the Motherless Daughters Ministry catalog of blogs. She's joining us today to talk about her journey. But first, let's hear The Last Goodbye, recorded by the author herself.
Few things are more heart-wrenching than saying that last goodbye to a loved one. My last goodbye to my mother happened when I was 16. The day was a Monday. I visited her in hospice that evening. I expected my mother to be awake and talking, but I found her in a coma, struggling to breathe. I stood there frozen, surrounded by my relatives, staring in disbelief at what had become of my mother. A relative gently said to me, "You need to tell her you love her and that it's okay for her to go. She is waiting for you." I remember thinking, how can I tell my mother it is okay to go? It is not okay for her to go. She can't leave me now. A month earlier, I was shocked to hear that my mom's breast cancer was terminal. The doctor estimated that she had about 3 months left. During that time, I tried thinking of all the things I would need to know from my mother. Memories, thoughts, advice on any future thing I might want to know. She was going to write it all down in a journal for me, but there wasn't time. The 3-month estimation was wrong. Months quickly turned into weeks. My mom became so weak that she could no longer write. Dad rushed to purchase a memory book so that visitors could read questions and write down Mom's answers. My mother also dictated letters for me to open at the major milestones of my life: 18th birthday, high school and college graduations, and wedding. I stood at my mom's bedside, thinking of all the things I still wanted to know. The memory book wasn't finished yet. Pages of questions still unanswered. How does a 16-year-old tell her mother that it is okay to die? I still needed my mother. I didn't know what to say or do, so I repeated what my relative said. "I love you, Mom. It's okay for you to go." I'm not sure I even held her hand when I said it. 14 years later, when I was 30, I was in a similar situation with my grandmother. We weren't sure that she would make it through the night. My aunt suggested we say our goodbyes. This time, I knew what to do. I held my grandmother's hand and leaned in close so that she could hear me. I told her that I loved her, that she was the best Nana. I told her how much I enjoyed our Scrabble games, and how I was sorry we didn't play one last time. I told her I loved watching baseball games with her, our White Castle and cheese coney dinners, and our family history talks. I told her it was okay to go, that I would be okay. I reminded her that she would see her baseball buddy again, my mom, whom she missed so much. Why are these two goodbyes so different? The age and stage of development. The human brain isn't fully developed until age 25. An adolescent cannot cognitively comprehend the loss of a mother, nor do they have the emotional maturity to deal with it. An adult in their 30s, however, has a life experience and maturity to understand the loss and know how to say goodbye. At 16, I thought my parents were immortal. They couldn't possibly die. But yes, even my mom wasn't immune to death. By 30, I understood the fragility of life and that I, too, will die someday. I am not invincible. I wish I could have given my mother the last goodbye that she deserved. Today I would tell her that she is the bravest person I know, who faced death with such grace and courage. I would tell her that she is my hero, and I hope I make her proud. I would thank her for teaching me about friendship, because that is one of the greatest gifts in my life. I would ask her to watch over me, but most of all, I would tell her how much I love her. But that, I think, she already knows.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll chat with Dottie Menkhaus about her mother loss experience.
Did you know, as a motherless daughter, you have a story to tell? Your loss, your grief, your anger, your pain, all deserves a voice. You deserve a voice. Motherless Daughters Ministry has a blog on our website, and this is where you can make your voice heard, and we want to help you with that. You can write under a pseudonym, remain anonymous, or use your real name, whatever you are most comfortable with. The good news is you don't have to be a professional writer. You just have to remain authentic, and your authenticity is what will capture the hearts and minds of motherless daughters around the world. Not sure what to write about or where to begin? Check out our blog on our website to get started. Just visit motherlessdaughtersministry.com and click blog on the top menu bar.
We're so pleased to have Dottie Menkhaus with us today to talk about her mother loss journey. Welcome to Nurturing Words, Voices of Experience, Dottie.
Thank you for having me, Gladys.
You know, we just heard your blog, which was written about 1 year ago. Can you tell us a little bit about your mother loss story?
Well, when I was 16, I'm 34 right now, and my mother passed away from breast cancer when I was 16. At the time, my family was going through a very difficult time because actually 3 family members were all terminally ill with cancer at the time. My dad's brother and my grandfather, my mother's father, and of course my mother. And they all passed kind of around the same time almost. My grandfather passed exactly 18 months after my mother. So it was a very difficult time for my family. You know, my mother passed when I was 16, and, I've just been dealing with it since then as best I can.
So we're not just talking about one loss here. We're talking about compounded losses in the family, which makes it more difficult.
Exactly, and more difficult to get support as well because, everyone's dealing with their own grief with, the loss of my mother, but also my dad dealing with the grief of the loss of, his wife, and then his brother a few months later, and then, my grandmother's loss of her daughter, and then, her husband, soon after that. So there was a lot of grief going on in the family during that time.
Support is really an important factor in dealing with grief. One of our readers posted a question about your blog, and what she said was, who became your caretaker after your mother died? You were 16, and she asked, who stepped in to fill what she called a mother gap?
Well, of course, my father was there as a caretaker, but, I don't think he really knew what to do with a teenage girl, I think it was just difficult with him, just dealing with his grief and then just not really knowing, what to do. But, as I said, the family was struggling, with the grief at the time. But, who really stepped up during that time period was my mom's friend, Jean. Jean and my mother were friends for 30 years. They were friends for a very long time. And actually, when my mom found out that she was dying, Jean was one of the first people she called, to let her know. And when my mom was in hospice care, Jean was there every day. During the day, spent the day with her. She was very helpful to us with helping manage the number of many, many visitors that came to, visit my mother. And, thankfully, Jean was able to do it because she's self-employed and can work wherever her laptop is. So she was able to kind of get a little bit of work done while she was taking care and tending to my mother. But there was a very special moment at hospice. There was a separate room that was off of the room where my mom was that, just had couches and places to sit. And I remember Jean and I sharing a, hospice dinner together. And she asked me, she said, your mom and I were friends for 30 years. We always did birthday dinners together, to make sure we at least saw each other twice a year. She said, would you like to continue that friendship? And I was like, sure. I mean, my mother was dying. I was like, I'll take a friend I can get,
Wow.
And, I knew Jean, but because she's a family friend, she's known me my entire life, but I didn't really know her like, mom did. But I was like, sure, that'd be great, and Jean was there. And I think in some ways, our friendship kind of helped her with her grief, because she knew my mom so well. She could point out, oh, your mom said, what you said there is exactly how your mom would say it. That gesture you made, that's just like your mom, So I think...
And that's kind of comforting.
Yeah, it was comforting because those are things I don't really see, as similarities. And it kind of reminded me of that my mom's still with me because of how much I am like her.
Yes.
And that was a wonderful gift. And, Jean has stories about my mom that she knows and everything. And, she was there, especially during those difficult years in high school. We would chat on AOL Instant Messenger back in the day when that was a thing. That's not even a thing anymore. But, we would get on there and chat. And she just was very important to me in helping me through that time. Because, as a teenager, it's really difficult, when your mom dies because, you lose so much of your identity, that mother figure to look towards when you're venturing out on your own. But then you kind of want to come back to that home base,
Right.
And
when you're
that stability.
When you're a teenager, home is the family base for years to come. And when something disrupts that anchor, it throws everything off base.
Yes. And even just my own sense of where I'm at with my peers was thrown off because no one else I knew had lost a mother. While everyone else my age was trying to, get dates for a dance or something, I was trying to piece together a mother figure,
Wow. I'm glad you brought that up because as a teenager, your friends are pretty much more important than anybody else at that time. Were there any of your friends that were your age supportive to you? Did they know what happened to you? Did you have any close friends that were intimately knowledgeable about your situation that were supportive for you?
There were a few, but, I also lost some friends because I don't think they really... I think they just didn't know what to do, and I can't blame them because, they're teenagers, they didn't have much of a sense of how to deal with things as I did. And so there's some of them that just, I don't think could handle it, And
when we look at adults, there are adults that don't know what to do.
Right.
Don't know how to respond to you when you lose your mom.
Right. After I kind of seen how, my peers kind of struggled, that's, I think, when I really kind of try to look to adults because okay, they know something. They have knowledge of what to do. So that's why, Jean was very helpful in just being there and giving me that stability during that very developmental time.
Let me ask you a question. We know that Jean was there. And when we look at your age group, what would you suggest to a teen who has a friend who has lost a mother? How would you suggest that they support their friend?
I would say just listen, just be there. That's really all you can really do in that situation. Just be there, include them in, your group. Don't like call them weird, or different, which is some of the responses I got. I mean, I know I'm a bit eccentric anyway, in just my personality, but during that time that it just really wasn't helpful to be like, you're just different. And I'd say, why? And they're like, I don't know, you just are. And that just really was not helpful.
Well, let me ask you this. In your blog, you mentioned something about a memory book. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's special for you?
When Mom was kind of declining in her health, my dad rushed to purchase a memory book where it has questions and you have answers to fill out. And Mom tried so hard to get as much as that done as she could. She was too weak to write it. So when Jean was there with her during the day, Jean would ask her questions and write it down. And Jean told me that a lot of times my mom was so weak, she'd kind of fall asleep during the middle of it, sometimes. But she tried so hard to give me something. And even when Jean wasn't there, the book was then passed to whoever else was visiting, because there was always somebody there,
Right.
And so, and it was kind of a good thing. And I kind of recommend this for, anybody that may have someone in hospice, and you want to get, memories from them. If you just have, a book or something that somebody could sit down and fill out, it also gives people something to do. I think a lot of times when people visit those in hospice, they may not know what to do, may feel awkward. I know
exactly
there was a lot of people that would come and be crying,
Right,
and my mom would say something to make them smile or comfort them. But if people had a job, like give them a job, like, hey, here, we're trying to fill out this memory book, of their memories, here's the book, here's a pen, ask them questions. And then it, allows the person visiting to maybe gain a new perspective on the person, or learn something new about them, or just reminisce memories.
And it gives them something to do with their hands.
Yeah,
something
and they may not feel awkward. And then they would also feel like, okay, I helped the family out. I did something.
Right.
I think that really kind of helped people that were visiting during that time. Like, here's a job,
Let me ask you this question. What is included in that memory book that is one of the most precious things to you?
There's a page where you could trace their hand. And so I was able to trace my mom's hand.
Oh.
And so I kind of, it's a nice memory of like how big her hands were compared to mine, and just that, like, okay, that was her hand.
Wow.
Out of all the memories written, that's probably my favorite page, is just that hand.
Now, as a teenager, it was very fortunate that you had one of your mother's best friends to support you. I know there had to be other folks. So who else served as a support for you during that time?
Well, I always had my mother's mother, my Nana, I called her.
Mm-hmm.
I liked to go over there and play Scrabble with her, and we enjoyed White Castles. I was the only one in the family that liked White Castles like she did, and cheese conies and stuff. And we would talk about family history. And in talking about family history, she helped me with my identity, because, when you lose a mother that young, you don't really know where you come from, who am I? You kind of lose that sense of like, who am I? Where did I come from? And learning about, my great uncles who fought in World War II and, her parents, and it kind of like allowed me to know, like, oh, I come from really tough people, really strong people.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of kind of inspired me, like, hey, I can be tough just like them. They went through really, really hard times too.
Mm-hmm.
And, everything turned out okay. And it also propelled me into my hobby of collecting family stories and preserving it, because after someone is gone, you don't have a chance anymore.
That's so very true. And genealogy is so popular right now. And to be able to have those stories and collect stories, it's a gift for you, and it's also a gift for the rest of the family.
Yes. And I actually have many hours worth of recordings of my grandmother talking, which now that she passed away, it's just nice to hear that, be able to still hear the voice, because she's gone.
That's a blessing of technology today. And
Yes.
years ago, so many people wish they had recordings of their family members' voices. What a precious gift. So
Yes.
You mentioned you are now 34 years old, and we're talking about 18 years since you lost your mom. And these are people that you have mentioned that are close to your family situation. What has happened in these last 18 years? We know that we still need support as motherless daughters. Who else has come into play for you to support you during these older years?
Well, after my grandmother passed, the only mother figure I had left was my Auntie Shirley. She was my grandmother's youngest sister, and she lived in San Diego, California. And she was well known for sending out cards for birthdays, Christmas, or just any occasion. And it was always nice to have a card in the mail from San Diego. And we talked on the phone all the time. I loved talking to her. And thankfully, I was able to visit her, once a year in the last few years. And she was very wise, and she taught me about spirituality, meditation, grounding yourself. She was very fun. We loved to play cards. She had the best laugh. And, my grandmother was fun and had a good laugh too. And they were both optimists, both my aunt and my nana. My nana always said, what will be, don't worry. And my auntie was kind of the same way. Whenever I was, worried about getting a new job or something like that, she always encouraged me, you'll find a great one. I know it, it'll all work out. And she was always there for me. And then she sadly, very suddenly passed away 3 days after Christmas in 2018. And I remember, talking on the phone with my uncle, and he told me, Cheryl loved you. He said, you were the daughter she never had. And that touched me. They never had children. And, I was her great niece, and she just loved me like a daughter. And that was very special. I really wish that we had lived closer and not on opposite, sides of the United States. And, I wish I would have been able to spend more time with her, but I am blessed to have the time that I had. And her loss was very, very difficult for me. I still struggle with it today. But after that, someone unexpected stepped in and filled that role. My friend Anne stepped in. She's older. She's in her 60s, so she's about the age that my mom would have been. And she encouraged me, personally and my work life as well. And she, taught me how to cook and how to, slice an onion, and, has all these great recipes she has shared with me. And she also encourages me to better myself, to take better care of myself, exercise, eat better, have healthy habits. She's always watching out for me in that way. And, we ride bikes together on a bike trail, and she's in such good shape that I'm just trying to keep up with her, and which is always a fun challenge for me. Like, I'm not going to get bested by a 60-year-old, I just can't allow that to happen. But I think she enjoys it because, she has this 30-year-old behind her huffing and puffing. But it was on the bike trail, one thing I really missed, about my mom is that I missed out on that time of getting to know her as an adult. I've often wondered what that would have been like to have that mother-daughter bond of friendship, to do things together and have fun and talk about life. And, I was robbed of that, when she died so young. As a teenager, you tend to butt heads with your parents because you're trying to, break away from them, get your own identity. And that's when I lost her. And so I never got to have that adult friendship bond with her. And it was one day while biking on the trail, I looked over at Anne and I realized that this is what it would have been like. I don't know if my mom would have been into riding bikes, but we would have done something else then, And I realized, this is what it would have been like. And, her love and nurturing just filled that deep void and just restored what I had lost. She's definitely become like a second mom to me. And in many ways, she reminds me of my mother. And I'm not really sure what it is. They have a few similar traits, but I think it's just similar spirits. And I think my mom would have been friends with her if they had known each other in life. And I think they would have been good friends. And for a period of time, I wondered if my mom would feel replaced, by these mother figures in my life. But I think mom is happy that I have people that care about me and love me enough to really be there for me and nurture me when she can't be there. Yeah, I mean, it's been really great. And, I think about it, we tend to mirror our mothers a lot. There's many things that is said that, we do things because our mother did it that way, whether it be in the kitchen or just, anything else. Well, why do you do that? Well, that's because mom did it this way. And these mother figures in my life, I tend to mirror them. And in another blog that I wrote, I write, as you navigate through life, your influence radiates from your spirit like ripples from a stone tossed into a pond. As you interact with others and share aspects of yourself, your ripples intersect with theirs until they merge. Part of you becomes part of them, and they become part of you. Some people create bigger ripples than others, ripples that shape the essence of our being. And I truly believe that these mother figures in my life have become part of me. It's truly merged. I see their influence in my life and in some things that I do. For example, recently, I had a mess in my oven and I didn't know how to clean it up. And I would have called Anne, but she wasn't able to talk at the time. So I thought, well, just got to figure this out. And, so I started cleaning it. And in my head, I heard a voice telling me, what to do, how to clean it. And I was caught off guard because it wasn't my mother's voice I was hearing. It was Anne's voice. And it made me cry for two reasons. One, that it wasn't my mom's voice because she never was able to teach me how to clean an oven. She never had that chance. And then I cried because it was Anne's voice, and I realized just how much she's become part of me, that she's there guiding me, even though she's not physically there telling me what to do, And it just really kind of struck me wow, these mother figures in my life have really become part of me. And that even when they're all gone, part of them will always live on through me, just like my mother lives on through me.
Well, Dottie, you've had a series of significant losses, but fortunately, you've had strong support so far in your journey. Through Motherless Daughters, we have learned that your support system is really what makes the difference in the grief process. I particularly liked the quote that you made from your previous blog, and that blog is entitled Mirror Image. And for our listeners, you can find that blog on the Motherless Daughters website. You have had such a blessing of support. Let's take a look back a little bit. We had another comment from a reader of your blog that paid attention to a statement that you made that said, I wish I could have given my mother the last goodbye that she deserved. And the comment that she wrote is that you owe it to yourself, your 16-year-old self, that child inside of you who forever needs her mom, you owe it to that girl to give yourself grace for the way you said goodbye to your mother. And she mentions the quote and says, your mother received a goodbye from her little girl. That's what she deserved, and you gave her that. She also mentions that the concept of grace and allowing you grace for yourself. She asked the question, can you see yourself allowing some grace for yourself? I think she was referring to a Bible verse that comes from 2 Corinthians that says, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And later on in that scripture, it says, for when I am weak, then I am strong. So, many people refer to that as having the grace to get through a situation. How might you respond respond to that reader's comment about receiving the goodbye from her little girl. I thought that was very touching.
Yeah, I'm quite touched by it as well. I guess I just never really thought of it that way. I tend to not give myself much grace as it is with anything. I tend to be overly hard on myself, but I am very touched by that. It's comforting to me to think that in that moment, even though I really didn't say much, that what little I did say was a comfort to her in that moment. It was enough. That she just wanted to hear my voice one last time, and it was enough for me to just tell her that I loved her and that it was okay to go. So thank you.
And that's very special, the thought that as children we grieve differently than we do as adults. And you've brought that out so well in the interview today. Your understanding of grief as an adult is different, and your treatment of grief when your grandmother died, you handled that a lot differently, as you brought out in the blog. And I don't remember, how long after your grandmother did your aunt pass away?
It was a year. About a year.
So each time one of those losses came into your life, did that surface anything about your mother's loss?
Yes. I mean, any loss can bring up any losses previously before that, especially after Auntie Cheryl died. You know, that was kind of, at the time, my last mother figure. So it really hit very hard. I still struggle with her loss because it was very sudden. I never really got closure with that. So even though it's been, about 2 years since then, I still struggle with that loss.
I have one last question for you. If we have an adolescent girl listening today, what would you tell that teenage girl who is facing the same situation?
I would say to reach out to those around you, especially, older adults that, want to be there for you, and, just accept that mothering, because it may have taken me just a minute to accept it, but once I did, I'm so glad to have that nurturing in my life. Yeah, so I mean, I would just tell them to reach out and, to talk to those around them, because you may be surprised, who will be there and what you can learn from them, and just how much they can impact your life in, positive ways. And, I also want to add that, even though I've gone through a lot of difficult things, I feel like the most blessed person in the world, because I had a wonderful, wonderful mom, but I have been able to get to know the other special women in my life, like Jean, my Nana, Auntie Cheryl, and Anne, at a level I may not have gotten to know them before. Love and friendship is really what has healed me and has given me peace about the loss of my mother. I think if I didn't have these women in my life, my dear friends, I think I would really be in a tough place. They have really, in a way, saved me and have given me so much peace. And I know that my mother is really happy that they are here, and she is just sitting in the best seat in the house, as she always said. She always said, I will be there to see everything, and I will have the best seat in the house. And so I know that she is up there, and she is smiling on me and is happy with who I have become and my friends.
Well, Dottie, you've had quite the journey. The women in your life have given you a wonderful foundation for peace for the journey ahead. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a conversation with Dottie Menkhaus, contributing author to the Motherless Daughters Ministry catalog of blogs. You can find more of her blogs on our website page at www.motherlessdaughtersministry.com. And thank all of you for spending your time with us here at Motherless Daughters Ministry. This podcast, Nurturing Words, Voices of Experience, was created by Motherless Daughters for Motherless Daughters, and it means so much that you're listening today. We want to have you back with us again and again. So don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. Have a blessed week.